When the original Ford Mustang debuted in April 1964, it single-handedly created the pony car segment and became a symbol of freedom, style, and American performance. Its aggressive styling, long hood, short deck proportions, and affordable price made it an instant success. Throughout the late 1960s, the Mustang only got bigger, more powerful, and more muscular, culminating in high-performance models like the Boss 302, Mach 1, and Boss 429. But as the 1970s began, the landscape of the American auto industry was changing dramatically. Muscle cars were under attack from multiple directions. Insurance companies were penalizing high-horsepower engines with skyrocketing premiums. Environmentalists were pushing for emissions regulations, and the federal government was demanding both improved fuel economy and enhanced safety features. Then came the 1973 oil crisis, when political turmoil in the Middle East sent gasoline prices soaring and supply dwindling. Suddenly, the same massive V8 engines that had defined the golden era of muscle cars became a liability. Consumers didn't want gas-guzzling performance machines anymore. They wanted smaller, more efficient cars, and many were turning to imports from Japan and Europe. Ford executives realized that if the Mustang was going to survive in this new environment, it couldn't continue as a large, heavy, thirsty performance car. They decided on a complete reimagining of the Mustang, a downsized, fuel-conscious model based on the Ford Pinto platform. This decision marked the birth of the Mustang II, introduced in 1974, just as the oil crisis peaked. On paper, the Mustang II seemed perfectly timed. It was smaller, lighter, and marketed as a right car for times. Ford even leaned heavily into its compact nature, advertising it as a Mustang that fit neatly into America's new reality of high fuel prices and urban congestion. But for enthusiasts, this new Mustang was nothing short of betrayal. Gone were the thunderous big block V8 options, the wide stance, and the raw horsepower that defined the Mustang's earlier years. Instead, the Mustang II launched with only two engines, a 2.3-liter inline-4 and a 2.8-liter V6. A 302 cubic inch V8 did return later, but by then emissions controls and power restrictions had neutered it to the point where it was only producing around 140 horsepower, barely enough to move the car with authority, let alone compete with the glory of the past. What made the controversy sting even more was that Ford marketed the Mustang II as the spiritual successor to the original, even though it shared more DNA with the Pinto than with the Mach 1 or Boss models that enthusiasts cherished. While it offered luxury trims, plush interiors, and even a glamorous Cobra II styling package, these touches couldn't mask the fact that the Mustang II lacked the soul of a true muscle car. It was smaller, slower, and far more restrained, appealing to a very different kind of buyer. Traditionalists saw it as a dilution of the Mustang legacy, a cynical move to cash in on the badge without honoring what it stood for. Even though the Mustang II actually sold well in its early years, thanks in part to timing and consumer demand, it quickly earned resentment from purists who felt Ford had abandoned its muscle car roots in exchange for corporate survival. This tension between commercial success and cultural backlash is what cemented the Mustang II's place in history as one of the most hated Ford muscle cars ever made. Despite its strong sales and strategic timing, the Ford Mustang II almost immediately became the black sheep of Ford's performance lineage. To enthusiasts who had fallen in love with the raw power of the 1960s Mustangs, the Mustang II represented everything wrong with the new decade. Its boxier, more restrained styling felt uninspired compared to the sweeping lines of the fastbacks and Mach 1s. Worse, the performance was a far cry from the fire-breathing V8S of the Boss era. Even the optional 302 cubic inch V8 was heavily strangled by emissions controls, producing barely enough horsepower to feel exciting. Critics ridiculed the Mustang II as underpowered, overweight for its size, and little more than a rebadged Pinto. Car magazines and gearheads often labeled it the anti-muscle car because it carried the Mustang badge but abandoned the very DNA that had made the name legendary. By the late 1970s, when muscle car culture was already in decline, the Mustang II became an easy target for enthusiasts nostalgic for the past. They saw it not as a product of circumstance, but as a betrayal of Ford's performance heritage. Over time, this disdain hardened into reputation. The Mustang II was routinely ranked among the worst cars ever built lists in automotive magazines, with critics pointing to its lack of performance, questionable build quality, and uninspired design. Collectors ignored it for decades, with prices for Mustang IIs remaining rock bottom, while earlier models skyrocketed in value. Enthusiast communities often joke that the best use of a Mustang II was to strip its rack and pinion steering system for hot rod builds, since that was one of the few praised components it offered. The Cobra II and King Cobra trim packages, which attempted to bring back some excitement with stripes, spoilers, and graphics, were largely dismissed as cosmetic gimmicks that added flash without substance. To many, these versions highlighted the problem rather than solved it. Ford was selling the image of performance while offering none of the real thing. The Mustang II became shorthand for the muscle car's dark days, a constant reminder how far the segment had fallen from its golden age. Yet, as much as a Mustang II is despised, its legacy is far more complex than enthusiasts often admit. While it is true that it lacked the speed, sound, and presence of its predecessors, the Mustang II actually performed an essential role in keeping the Mustang name alive during one of the most hostile eras for performance cars. At the time, many muscle cars simply died off because they couldn't adapt. Models like the Plymouth Barracuda, Dodge Challenger, temporarily, and Chevrolet Chevelle SS either disappeared or transformed into entirely different cars. The Mustang II, by contrast, gave Ford a way to continue selling a car under the Mustang name when the market demanded economy and practicality over horsepower. In fact, the Mustang II sold more than 1 million units between 1974 and 1978, which was a huge achievement considering the economic climate. Without this stopgap model, there's a very real chance the Mustang could have been discontinued altogether, making its later revival in the 1980s with the Fox body platform impossible. In recent years, some collectors and historians have started to reevaluate the Mustang II, recognizing it not as a failure, but as a product of its time. While it will likely never shake its reputation as the most hated Ford muscle car, some argue that it deserves respect for surviving an era that killed many of its rivals. Certain variants, such as the King Cobra, have even begun to attract niche interest, if only because of their rarity and quirky 1970s styling. Still, its cultural image remains firmly negative. When enthusiasts gather to celebrate Ford performance history, the Mustang II is either ignored, laughed at, or treated as a cautionary tale. Ultimately, the Mustang II is remembered less for its practicality or sales success, and more for how dramatically it strayed from what people believed a Mustang should be. It became a symbol of compromise, a car that wore the badge and icon, but failed to deliver on its promise. And that enduring disappointment is what has secured the Mustang II's place as the most hated Ford muscle car ever made. Love it or hate it, the Mustang II kept the Mustang name alive when many rivals vanished. So, what do you think? Does it deserve its reputation as Ford's most hated muscle car, or is it time to give it some overdue respect?